I'm Flora, 62 years old, and what I'm about to share still brings tears to my eyes. 3 months ago, at my grandson Noah's birthday party, my daughter-in-law Stephanie violently pushed me into a glass shelf, leaving me bleeding and bruised. But what hurt infinitely more was the text message I received from my only son Marcus later that day: "Stay away from my family." The boy I raised alone after his father died, choosing his wife over his mother without a second thought. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound possibly could. If you're watching this, I'd love to know where you're viewing from. Please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Family relationships can be so complicated, and as you'll see in my story, sometimes the people we love the most are capable of hurting us in ways we never imagined. Life was beautiful once. Robert and I built a wonderful little world for ourselves and our son Marcus. We weren't wealthy by any means, but our modest 3-bedroom house in the suburbs of Portland was always filled with laughter and love. Robert worked as an electrical engineer while I taught 4th grade at the local elementary school. We saved diligently, took camping trips instead of fancy vacations, and poured all our love into raising Marcus. Robert was the kind of man they don't seem to make anymore. Patient kind with a booming laugh that could fill a room. He taught Marcus how to fish, how to change a tire, and most importantly, how to treat others with respect. "You can tell a man's character by how he treats those who can do nothing for him," he'd often say. I see now how prophetic those words would become. Marcus was our pride and joy, an intelligent, sensitive boy with his father's analytical mind and my creativity. He excelled in school without much prodding, particularly in science and math. While other parents struggled with rebellious teenagers, Marcus remained respectful and communicative. He'd tell us about his day over dinner, share his dreams of working in technology, and even talk about the girls he liked, something many boys his age would rather die than discuss with their parents. Our lives changed irrevocably when Robert suffered a massive heart attack. It happened on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday. He had just finished mowing the lawn and came inside complaining of indigestion. Within 20 minutes, he was gone. The paramedics tried their best, but at 52, my husband left this world far too soon. Marcus was just 20 at the time, halfway through his computer science degree. The grief hit him hard, but he channeled his pain into his studies, determined to make his father proud. I remember the night after the funeral finding him in Robert's study, clutching his dad's old calculator and sobbing. "I don't know how to do this without him, Mom," he cried. I held him close, promising we would figure it out together. And we did. Those years after Robert's death were difficult, but strengthened the bond between Marcus and me. I took on extra tutoring work to help with his college expenses, and he worked part-time at the campus IT department. We spoke on the phone several times a week, and he came home most weekends. We developed our own little traditions. Sunday morning pancakes, just like Robert used to make marathon sessions of Marcus's favorite sci-fi shows, and long walks where we'd talk about everything and nothing. When Marcus graduated with honors, I sat in the audience bursting with pride, knowing Robert would have felt the same. Marcus looked out from the stage, found me in the crowd, and gave a small salute, our private signal that meant, "We did it, Dad would be proud." I still have the photo from that day framed on my mantel, Marcus beaming in his cap and gown, his arm around my shoulders. He landed an excellent position at a software company in Seattle, about 3 hours from our home in Portland. The distance was manageable, and Marcus came home at least once a month. When he couldn't visit, we'd have video calls where he'd excitedly explain his latest project, though I understood perhaps a tenth of the technical jargon he used. What mattered was seeing his passion, his fulfillment in doing work he loved. Marcus dated casually through his 20s, never seeming in a rush to settle down. He'd sometimes bring girls home to meet me, and I always made a point to be welcoming without being overbearing. There was kind-hearted Lisa, who worked as a pediatric nurse, intellectual Megan, who shared Marcus's love of obscure sci-fi, and free-spirited Jamie, who introduced him to rock climbing and outdoor adventures. All lovely young women, but none quite clicked as a lifelong partner. Meanwhile, I rebuilt my own life. After 30 years of teaching, I retired and took a part-time position at our local library, surrounded by books and community events. I tended my vegetable garden, joined a book club, and volunteered teaching literacy to adults. My friends, mostly fellow teachers and neighbors I'd known for decades, provided companionship and support. It wasn't the life I'd imagined with Robert by my side, but it was fulfilling in its own quiet way. Marcus would call with tech support whenever my computer gave me trouble, patiently talking me through the steps to fix whatever I'd inadvertently done wrong. "Mom, how did you download 17 toolbars?" he'd ask, laughing. These small interactions, the easy affection between us, were the steady drumbeat of our relationship. "When you meet someone special, you'll know," I told Marcus whenever he expressed frustration with dating. "Your father asked me to marry him after 3 months, and everyone thought we were crazy. But when it's right, it's right." Little did I know how those words would come back to haunt me, because when Marcus met Stephanie, everything changed, just not in the way I had hoped. I'll never forget the day Marcus first mentioned Stephanie. We were having our weekly Sunday video call, and he seemed different, more animated, a certain sparkle in his eyes I hadn't seen before. "I met someone, Mom," he said, trying and failing to suppress a grin. "Her name is Stephanie. She works in marketing at a firm that partners with my company." "Tell me about her," I encouraged, genuinely happy to see him excited. "She's amazing," he gushed. "Smart, ambitious, beautiful. We met at a corporate mixer last month and just clicked. She's unlike anyone I've ever dated." Something in his tone gave me pause. Marcus had always been level-headed about relationships, but there was an intensity to his enthusiasm that seemed uncharacteristic. Still, who was I to question his judgment? He was 32, successful, and had always demonstrated good sense. When Marcus announced he was bringing Stephanie to Portland to meet me 2 weeks later, I was thrilled. I cleaned the house from top to bottom, planned a special meal with all Marcus's favorites, and even bought new dishes for the occasion. I wanted everything to be perfect for this woman who had so captivated my son. They arrived on a Friday evening, Marcus practically bouncing with nervous energy as he made the introductions. Stephanie was undeniably striking, tall and slender with perfectly styled blonde hair, wearing an expensive-looking cream blouse and tailored pants. Her smile was dazzling, her handshake firm. On the surface, she embodied poise and confidence. "It's so nice to finally meet you, Mrs. Bennett," she said, her voice melodic and polished. "Marcus has told me so much about you." "Please call me Flora," I insisted, leading them into the living room. "I've been looking forward to meeting you too." Throughout dinner, I observed their interactions closely. Marcus couldn't take his eyes off Stephanie, laughing a little too loudly at her jokes, constantly seeking her approval. Stephanie was charming and articulate, asking appropriate questions about my life and work, complimenting my home and cooking. Yet something felt off. Her smile never quite reached her eyes, and I caught glimpses of a different expression when Marcus wasn't looking, something calculating and cold. "Marcus tells me you teach," she said delicately, cutting her chicken. "I'm retired now, but yes, I taught elementary school for 30 years, I replied. "These days I work part-time at the library." "How quaint," she said in a tone that could be interpreted as either sincere or condescending. "I could never work with children all day, or in such a quiet environment. I need excitement challenges." When I asked about her work, Stephanie launched into an impressive description of her role developing marketing strategies for tech companies. She dropped names of major corporations and spoke about campaigns that had apparently revolutionized their clients' market position. Marcus watched her with undisguised admiration. "Stephanie just got promoted to senior director," he interjected proudly. "She's the youngest ever in her company." "That's wonderful," I said sincerely. "Congratulations." Stephanie accepted the praise with practiced modesty. "It's just about understanding people's motivations," she said. "Once you know what drives someone, it's relatively easy to guide their decisions." Something about the way she said it sent a slight chill through me, though I couldn't have articulated why. After dinner, Marcus insisted on clearing the table, leaving Stephanie and me alone in the living room. I attempted to engage her in conversation about her family, her interests outside work, the normal getting-to-know-you topics. Her responses were polite but minimal, creating a wall of pleasantries impossible to penetrate. "I understand you lost your husband some years ago," she said abruptly, changing the subject from her own background. "That must have been very difficult." "It was," I acknowledged. "Robert was the love of my life, but having Marcus helped me through it." "Marcus is very attached to you." She observed her tone neutral, but her eyes assessing. It's unusual for a grown man to be so close to his mother. Before I could respond, Marcus returned, and Stephanie's demeanor shifted instantly. She smiled warmly, patting the sofa beside her. "Honey, I was just telling Flora how special your relationship is." Marcus beamed, oblivious to any undercurrent. "Mom's amazing. She raised me on her own after Dad died, never missed a single one of my games or science fairs, even when she was working 2 jobs. Stephanie linked her arm through his, her smile tightening almost imperceptibly. "And now you have me to look after you." The weekend continued in much the same vein, pleasant on the surface with moments of discomfort I couldn't quite define. I noticed Stephanie frequently checking Marcus's phone when it buzzed, asking who was messaging him. She selected his clothes for dinner out Saturday night, dismissing his initial choice with a laugh and a comment about his bachelor style. When I mentioned an old friend of his from high school who still lived nearby, suggesting we invite him over, Stephanie smoothly redirected the conversation, claiming they didn't have time during this short visit. By Sunday afternoon, when they prepared to leave, I felt a gnawing worry in my stomach. Marcus seemed happy, but also somehow different, more careful with his words, constantly checking Stephanie's reactions before speaking. When he hugged me goodbye, I held on perhaps a moment too long. "She's certainly accomplished," I said carefully, as Marcus loaded their bags into the car while Stephanie used the bathroom. "You seem very taken with her." "She's incredible, Mom," he insisted. "I know it might seem fast, but I've never felt this way before." I wanted to ask more to express the vague concerns I couldn't articulate, but Stephanie emerged from the house and the moment passed. After they left, I tried to dismiss my misgivings as the natural protectiveness of a mother. No woman would ever be quite good enough for my son in my eyes, right? But as weeks passed, my concerns deepened rather than faded. Marcus's calls became less frequent and shorter when they did occur. When I called him, he often whispered that he was busy and would call back later, which he sometimes forgot to do. Our Sunday video chats dwindled from weekly to monthly, with Stephanie often hovering in the background or interrupting with questions or comments directed at Marcus. When I did manage to speak with him alone, Marcus talked mostly about Stephanie, her latest accomplishment at work, an expensive restaurant she'd introduced him to, her plans for redecorating his apartment. His own passions, hiking, vintage computer restoration, science fiction, were mentioned less and less. 3 months after our first meeting, Marcus called with news that hit me like a physical blow. "Mom, I asked Stephanie to marry me. We're engaged." "That's very quick," I said, struggling to sound supportive. "You've only known each other a few months." "When you know," he replied, throwing my own words back at me. "You and Dad got engaged after 3 months, remember?" "Yes, but we'd been friends for a year before that," I pointed out gently. "And we were young. At your age, most people take more time to—" "I thought you'd be happy for me," Marcus interrupted, his voice hardening in a way I'd rarely heard. "Stephanie said you might react like this. She said mothers sometimes have trouble letting go." That stung. "Marcus, I only want what's best for you. If Stephanie makes you happy, then I'm happy. I just think—" "We're getting married in 6 weeks," he cut in. "Small ceremony. Stephanie's organizing everything." 6 weeks? But that's so soon. What about saving for a house or having time to plan a proper wedding? "Stephanie's parents are helping with the finances," he said dismissively. "And we don't need anything elaborate, just close family and a few friends." I took a deep breath, recognizing that my concerns were only pushing him away. "All right. What can I do to help?" "Nothing right now," he said. "Stephanie has it under control. She'll email you the details." After we hung up, I sat in my garden watching bees flit between the lavender plants Robert had planted years ago, trying to process my emotions. I had always imagined being involved in planning my only child's wedding, helping choose venues, tasting cakes, offering the small traditions and touches that make such events personal. Being sidelined hurt more than I wanted to admit. The email from Stephanie arrived 3 days later, a formal invitation to a ceremony at a small boutique hotel in Seattle, with a note that they had reserved a room for me for one night. The wedding was on a Thursday afternoon, an unusual choice that made it difficult for people who worked traditional hours to attend. When I called Marcus to ask about this, he explained that the venue had been available on short notice at a significant discount for a weekday. "It's just more practical this way," he said, his voice distracted. I could hear Stephanie talking in the background. "Will any of your friends from Portland be there?" I asked. "What about your college roommate David, or your colleagues from your first job?" "We're keeping it very small," he said vaguely. "Mostly Stephanie's colleagues and family since they're local to Seattle. It's easier that way." As the wedding approached, I made several attempts to be included, offering to help address invitations, suggesting we go shopping for his suit, asking if there were any family traditions he'd like to incorporate. Each offer was politely but firmly declined. "Stephanie has very specific ideas about the aesthetic," Marcus explained when I mentioned bringing Robert's cufflinks for him to wear. "We're going for a modern minimalist look." When the day finally arrived, I drove to Seattle alone, a wrapped box containing a handmade quilt I'd spent weeks creating on the passenger seat beside me. The ceremony was as impersonal as I'd feared, sleek and stylish, but lacking any warmth or personal touches. Stephanie was stunning in a designer gown, and Marcus looked handsome in his tailored suit, but they might have been models in a magazine spread, rather than a couple celebrating their love. Stephanie's parents were exactly as I'd imagined them. Her father, Martin, a loud, backslapping businessman who mentioned his golf handicap within 2 minutes of meeting me. Her mother, Vivian, slim and elegant in an expensive suit, her smile as practiced and empty as her daughter's. They spoke of Stephanie's accomplishments with practiced pride, but showed little interest in learning anything about Marcus or me. "Marcus is in computers, right?" Martin asked vaguely during the rehearsal dinner, despite having met my son multiple times. "Good stable field, though not as lucrative as real estate development, of course." He winked as though sharing a secret joke. The wedding party consisted entirely of Stephanie's friends, sleek young professionals, who clustered together, occasionally glancing at me with barely disguised curiosity or pity, the dowdy mother-in-law clearly out of place in their glamorous world. I wore a blue dress I'd bought specially for the occasion, but next to the designer outfits surrounding me, it felt embarrassingly inadequate. During the reception, I barely had 5 minutes alone with Marcus. When I gave him the quilt, he thanked me awkwardly, setting it aside without opening it, as Stephanie called him over to meet an important client. Later, I noticed the package had disappeared, presumably whisked away with the other gifts. "Will you be visiting Portland soon?" I asked when I finally managed to speak with him. "I'd love to have you and Stephanie over for dinner as a married couple." "We're pretty busy settling into our new place," he said vaguely, "and Stephanie's schedule is packed with client meetings, but we'll try to make it down in the next few months." As I drove home the next day, I felt an emptiness I hadn't experienced since Robert's death. Something had fundamentally shifted in my relationship with my son, and I didn't know how to fix it. The months following Marcus and Stephanie's wedding confirmed my worst fears about their relationship. My once close bond with my son deteriorated into occasional text messages and brief, superficial phone calls that always seemed to occur when Stephanie was busy elsewhere. The weekly video chats that had been our tradition were now monthly, at best often canceled at the last minute. When I did manage to speak with Marcus, he sounded perpetually rushed and distracted. Conversations that once flowed easily now felt stilted and limited to safe topics like the weather or general news. Whenever I asked personal questions about their life together, his answers became vague and evasive. 3 months after the wedding, I finally received an invitation to visit their new home, a modern townhouse in an upscale Seattle neighborhood. I spent hours selecting a housewarming gift, eventually choosing a beautiful handcrafted cutting board and serving platter, along with a bottle of wine I could ill afford on my retirement income. The townhouse was immaculate, decorated in a stark, minimalist style, with white walls, glass surfaces, and carefully curated abstract art. It looked like a spread from an interior design magazine, impressive but impersonal. What struck me immediately was the complete absence of family photos. No wedding pictures, nothing of Marcus's childhood, not a single image of Robert or me. "Your home is lovely," I said diplomatically, as Stephanie gave me a brief tour. "We worked with an interior designer," she replied, straightening an already perfectly aligned cushion. "Clean lines, no clutter. Studies show minimalist environments reduce stress and increase productivity. When I presented my gifts, Stephanie examined them with a critical eye. "How rustic," she said of the cutting board. "We don't do much cooking, but perhaps we can use it as a decorative piece in the guest bathroom." Throughout the day, I noticed how Stephanie subtly controlled every aspect of their home life. She answered questions I'd directed to Marcus, decided when and what they would eat, and even corrected his table manners with small touches and meaningful glances. My confident, independent son seemed to have been replaced by someone who constantly looked to his wife for approval before speaking or acting. When Marcus briefly left the room to take a work call, Stephanie turned to me with a tight smile. "I hope you don't mind my saying this, Flora, but that cardigan doesn't do you any favors. The color washes you out completely. And have you considered updating your hairstyle? Something shorter might be more age-appropriate." Taken aback by her directness, I fumbled for a response. "I've always liked blue, and my hair has been this length since college." "That's exactly my point," she said with a small laugh. "Change can be good. Marcus and I believe in constant self-improvement." When Marcus returned, Stephanie smoothly shifted the conversation, but the pattern continued throughout my visit. She made comments about my quaint library job, asked if I'd considered selling my outdated house now that I was all alone, and suggested my gardening hobby was keeping me stuck in the past. Each remark was delivered with a smile and often disguised as concern, making it difficult to object without seeming overly sensitive. More disturbing was Marcus's reaction. Rather than defending me, he often nodded along with Stephanie's assessments or remained silent. By the end of my visit, I felt thoroughly judged and found wanting. As I prepared to leave, Marcus gave me a quick, almost furtive hug. "It was good seeing you, Mom," he said, but his eyes didn't quite meet mine. "When will you visit Portland?" I asked. "Your friends ask about you all the time." "We'll have to see," he said vaguely. "Things are really busy with work, and Stephanie's schedule is packed through the end of the quarter." Over the next year, this pattern solidified. My invitations were deflected or accepted, and then canceled at the last minute. My phone calls went increasingly to voicemail. My attempts to maintain our connection were met with polite resistance and excuses. Then came the news that changed everything. Stephanie was pregnant. Marcus called to tell me, his voice a mixture of excitement and anxiety. "You're going to be the grandmother, Mom. We're due in August." "Oh, Marcus, that's wonderful news," I exclaimed, genuinely thrilled, despite my concerns about their relationship. "How is Stephanie feeling? Is there anything I can do to help?" "She's doing great, very organized about the whole thing. She's already researched the top-rated obstetricians and has a birth plan mapped out." He paused. "Listen, Mom Stephanie wants to keep this quiet for now. No announcing it on social media or telling all your friends, okay? It's still early." "Of course," I assured him, though I was hurt by the implication that I couldn't be trusted with their news. "But I can tell Aunt Susan, right? And my book club friends." No one for now," he insisted. "Stephanie is very private about this. She doesn't even want people at her work to know yet." As the pregnancy progressed, I made numerous offers to help, shopping for baby items, helping set up the nursery, or simply being there to support them. Each offer was politely declined. "Stephanie's mother is handling all that," Marcus explained when I suggested coming up for a weekend to help paint the nursery. "She has very specific ideas about the design." "What about a baby shower?" I asked. "I'd love to host one for you both." "Stephanie's colleagues are organizing something at work," he said. "It's easier that way since all her friends are in Seattle." I swallowed my disappointment. "Well, please send me her registry information. I want to get something special for my grandchild." "Actually, we're not doing a traditional registry," Marcus replied. "Stephanie's found this service where people can contribute to a fund for the baby's education instead of sending gifts." Each conversation seemed designed to keep me at arm's length from this significant event in their lives. When I expressed a desire to be present for the birth, Marcus gently but firmly explained that Stephanie wanted only her mother in the delivery room, and they wouldn't be accepting visitors at the hospital. "We'll let you know when we're ready for visits," he promised. "Stephanie wants time to recover and establish breastfeeding before having guests." My grandson Noah James Bennett was born on August 12th, a healthy 8-pound boy with a shock of dark hair like his father. I learned of his arrival via text message, along with a single photo of a tiny hand wrapped around Marcus's finger. No picture of the baby's face, no invitation to visit. It was a full week before I was allowed to meet my grandson. I drove to Seattle with a car full of gifts and a heart full of anticipation, only to be greeted by an exhausted Marcus and a frosty Stephanie, who limited my visit to exactly 1 hour. "We're on a very strict schedule with feeding and napping," she explained, watching like a hawk as I finally held Noah. "Newborns need consistency above all else." Noah was beautiful, perfect in every way, with Marcus's chin and Stephanie's blue eyes. I fell in love instantly, tears welling as I cradled him. "He's absolutely perfect," I whispered. "Please don't cry on the baby," Stephanie said sharply. "He's just had a bath." When I asked to take a photo with Noah, Stephanie insisted on taking the picture herself, with my phone deleting several shots before approving one where the baby's face was partially obscured by a blanket. "We're limiting Noah's digital footprint," she explained. "No photos on social media, please." The pattern established during pregnancy intensified after Noah's birth. My visits were strictly controlled, always scheduled during Stephanie's designated visiting hours, never longer than 90 minutes, and always under her watchful eye. I was rarely permitted to hold Noah and never allowed to feed him or change him. "He's very particular about who handles him," Stephanie would say, quickly taking him back if he made the slightest fuss in my arms. "He can sense tension, you know." I offered countless times to babysit to give them a break for an evening or even just a couple of hours. "I raised a child after all," I reminded them gently. "I do know what I'm doing." "We're not comfortable leaving him yet," was always the response, though I noticed Stephanie's mother, Vivian, was regularly enlisted to watch Noah. As months passed, my relationship with my grandson consisted primarily of FaceTime calls, where I would make silly faces at a disinterested infant, while Stephanie monitored every interaction. My suggestions based on experience were dismissed as outdated or not aligned with current pediatric recommendations. "Actually, the latest research shows that's not correct," became Stephanie's standard response to any childcare advice I offered, regardless of how benign. By Noah's first birthday, I had seen him in person exactly 7 times, despite my willingness to make the 3-hour drive whenever permitted. The birthday itself was celebrated with a small family gathering, to which I was not invited, learning about it only afterward through photos Marcus texted me. "It was just Stephanie's parents and a couple of close friends," he explained apologetically when I expressed my hurt. "Very low-key, nothing special." The photos showed an elaborate event with professional decorations, custom cake, and at least 20 guests. My exclusion was deliberate and painful. When Noah turned 2, I was finally invited to his birthday celebration, a carefully orchestrated affair at an upscale children's activity center. I arrived with a gift I'd selected with great care, a set of wooden blocks handcrafted by a local artisan painted with letters and animals. "How thoughtful," Stephanie said without enthusiasm, setting the gift aside unopened. "We're trying to limit Noah's toys, focusing on educational items only." Throughout the party, I was positioned firmly as an outsider. While Stephanie's parents were given places of honor and introduced to everyone as Nana and Papa, I was vaguely referenced as Marcus's mother on the few occasions anyone spoke to me at all. In the group photo later posted to Stephanie's private Instagram, which Marcus had secretly shown me, I had been cropped out entirely. The final insult came when Noah, in a rare moment of freedom, toddled over to me with a book clearly wanting to be read to. As I settled him on my lap, Stephanie swooped in. "We need to stick to the schedule," she said, plucking him from my arms. "It's time for cake and presents." I watched fighting tears as my grandson was carried away, his little face turning back to look at me in confusion. By the time Noah's 3rd birthday approached, the pattern of exclusion was well established. I was surprised to receive an actual invitation formally requesting my presence at Noah's dinosaur adventure party. The invitation specified a 2-hour time slot and included a note, "No large gifts, please, small books or educational items only." Despite everything, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps things were changing. Perhaps I was finally being acknowledged as Noah's grandmother. I carefully selected a small, beautifully illustrated book about dinosaurs, wrapped it elegantly, and prepared for the drive to Seattle with cautious optimism. I could never have imagined how that hopeful day would end, or how a simple act of grandmotherly love would shatter what remained of my relationship with my son. Noah's third birthday party was held at Marcus and Stephanie's townhouse, transformed for the occasion, with dinosaur decorations, prehistoric plants, and a massive banner proclaiming Noah's Jurassic Adventure. Stephanie greeted me at the door with her usual cool politeness. "You're early," she noted, checking her watch. "We specifically mentioned 1 o'clock on the invitation." "I'm sorry. I apologize, though I was only 10 minutes ahead of the stated time. I wanted to allow extra time for traffic." "Well, come in, but nothing's quite ready yet." Inside the house was filled with unfamiliar faces. Stephanie's colleagues, her parents, and what appeared to be neighborhood families with children Noah's age. I recognized no one from Marcus's pre-Stephanie life, none of his longtime friends or co-workers. Marcus emerged from the kitchen looking harried. "Mom, glad you could make it," he said, giving me a quick, distracted hug. "Can you just sit over there for now? Stephanie's got everything organized in a specific order." I took my assigned seat in a corner of the living room, clutching my small wrapped gift and watching as other guests arrived. Stephanie's mother, Vivian, held court in the center of the room, showing phone pictures of Noah to admiring guests and referring to herself as the devoted grandmother, loud enough for me to hear. Noah himself was dressed in an elaborate dinosaur costume, being paraded around by Stephanie to exclamations of delight from her friends. When he spotted me, his face lit up with recognition. "Gamma!" he called, breaking free from Stephanie's grasp and running toward me with arms outstretched. My heart soared as I embraced my grandson. "Happy birthday, sweet boy," I said, kissing his cheek. "You've gotten so big." "Noah," Stephanie called sharply, appearing at my side with remarkable speed. "Come show Mrs. Davis your dinosaur costume. She brought her son Tyler specially to play with you." Noah looked conflicted, glancing between me and his mother. "Go ahead," I encouraged gently. "We can talk more later." As the party progressed, I remained largely sidelined, watching as Noah opened presents, blew out candles, and participated in carefully organized dinosaur-themed games. Stephanie orchestrated every moment with precision, her eyes constantly scanning the room to ensure everything proceeded according to her plan. During a rare moment when Stephanie was distracted with cake distribution, Marcus approached my corner. "How are you, Mom?" he asked, his voice low. "It's been a while." "I'm fine," I replied, studying his face. He looked tired, with faint shadows under his eyes. "How are you really?" He shrugged, glancing over his shoulder to check Stephanie's location. "Busy. Work's intense right now, and Noah's a handful at this age." "I'd be happy to help more," I offered for perhaps the 100th time. "I could come up on weekends, or you could bring Noah down to Portland sometimes. My schedule is flexible." "It's complicated," he said vaguely. "Stephanie feels strongly about maintaining Noah's routine, and with her parents so close by." He trailed off, leaving the implication clear. Her parents were preferred childcare providers. "Marcus, is everything okay between you two?" I ventured carefully. "You seem stressed." His posture stiffened immediately. "Everything's fine. Why wouldn't it be? Marcus." Stephanie's voice cut through our conversation. "Your father-in-law is looking for you. Something about that investment opportunity he mentioned." With an apologetic glance, Marcus moved away, immediately absorbed back into Stephanie's carefully controlled world. As the party continued, I noticed that my gift remained unopened on the table, while all others had been enthusiastically unwrapped and displayed. When I gently inquired about this, Stephanie smiled thinly. "We're opening family gifts later," she said, emphasizing family, in a way that somehow excluded me from the category. Near the end of my designated 2-hour window, I approached Stephanie quietly. "I brought something else for Noah," I said. "It's in my car. It's a bit larger, so I didn't bring it in initially." Her expression tightened. "I specifically mentioned no large gifts on the invitation." "It's not new," I explained hastily. "It's something special from Marcus's childhood. I thought Noah might enjoy it now that he's getting bigger." After a moment of deliberation, she nodded curtly. "Fine, but please be quick about it. We're on a schedule." I hurried to my car and carefully removed the item I'd spent weeks restoring, a small blue bicycle with training wheels that had been Marcus's when he was 4. I had discovered it in my garage, rusty and neglected, and had it professionally refurbished, the frame repainted, the same vibrant blue new tires, and safety features added. It wasn't fancy or expensive, but it carried precious memories and represented a connection between my son and his son. As I wheeled it into the house, I saw Marcus's eyes widen in recognition. "Mom, is that your old bike?" I confirmed, smiling. "Remember how your father taught you to ride in the park? I thought Noah might like to learn on the same bicycle his daddy used." For a brief moment, Marcus's face softened with nostalgia. "I remember Dad running alongside, holding the seat until I found my balance." "Absolutely not." Stephanie's voice cut through the memory like ice. She stood rigidly, arms folded across her chest. "That thing is ancient and probably violates every current safety standard." "It's been completely refurbished," I explained, trying to keep my voice even. "New brakes, new chain guard, everything checked for safety." "It's used," she hissed, as though the word was obscene, "and filthy old. Noah has a brand new balance bike with proper safety features." "It's not about the bike itself," I tried to explain. "It's about the connection, the family history." "We are Noah's family now," Stephanie said coldly. "Not some idealized version of the past you're trying to preserve." I felt heat rising in my cheeks, aware that several guests were watching the exchange with uncomfortable interest. "I'm simply trying to share something meaningful with my grandson, something that connects him to his father's childhood, to his grandfather." "Meaningful," Stephanie laughed derisively. "A rusty old death trap." "This is exactly the problem, Flora. You're living in the past, trying to force your outdated sentimentality onto my son." "Our son," I corrected quietly but firmly. Something in Stephanie's expression changed, then her carefully maintained facade cracking to reveal a flash of raw anger. "Marcus, deal with this," she commanded. "I can't have this junk contaminating our home." Without waiting for a response, she grabbed the bicycle and shoved it toward a corner where it toppled over with a crash. "Stephanie," Marcus began, his voice hesitant. "Mom was just trying to—" "I don't care what she was trying to do," Stephanie snapped. "This is Noah's special day, and she's making it about herself, as usual." I stepped forward, unable to remain silent any longer. "I have made every effort to respect your boundaries, Stephanie, even when they've been unreasonable and hurtful. But I will not stand here and be accused of ruining my grandson's birthday when all I've done is try to share something meaningful with him." "There you go again," Stephanie said, her voice rising, "making everything about your feelings, your needs. This is why we limit your visits. You're exhausting with your constant neediness." Noah, who had been playing nearby with another child, looked up at the sound of raised voices, his little face crumpling with confusion and the beginnings of fear. "Please," I said, lowering my voice, "let's not do this in front of Noah. This is supposed to be a happy day." "Then stop ruining it," Stephanie hissed, stepping closer to me. "Stop trying to insert yourself where you're not wanted. Noah has enough grandparental influence with my parents. He doesn't need your outdated ideas and emotional manipulation." The room had fallen silent, other guests pretending great interest in their cake or the floor, anywhere but the unfolding drama. Marcus stood frozen, his eyes darting between his wife and mother, clearly conflicted, but making no move to intervene. "I think I should go," I said quietly, fighting to maintain my composure. "This isn't the time or place for this discussion." As I turned to leave, I felt Stephanie's hand grip my arm tightly. "Don't you walk away when I'm talking to you," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "Please let go of me," I requested calmly, though my heart was racing. "Not until you understand once and for all that your role in this family is whatever we decide it is," she continued, her fingers digging painfully into my flesh. "Not what you want it to be." "Stephanie," Marcus finally spoke up, taking a hesitant step forward. "Maybe we should—" "Stay out of this," she snapped at him, before turning back to me, her face contorted with anger. "You think you can just waltz in here with your pathetic attempts to recreate the past, to remind Marcus of his dead father and your perfect little family? We are his family now, not you. You're just the old woman we visit out of obligation." Her words cut deeply, but what happened next happened so quickly I could barely process it. As I attempted to pull my arm free, Stephanie's control finally snapped. With surprising strength, she shoved me backward, sending me stumbling into a glass display cabinet filled with expensive figurines and photo frames. I felt a sharp pain as the corner of the cabinet caught my back, heard the sound of shattering glass as several shelves collapsed under my weight. I threw out my hands instinctively to catch myself, feeling glass slice into my palm and forearm as I slid to the floor amid the debris. The room erupted in gasps and exclamations. Noah began wailing in fear. Through a haze of shock and pain, I was aware of blood spreading across my sleeve, of sharp, stinging sensations in multiple places. "Oh my God!" someone exclaimed. "She's bleeding!" Marcus finally broke his paralysis, rushing toward me. "Mom, are you okay?" Before he could reach me, Stephanie intercepted him, grabbing his arm. "Don't!" she commanded. "She did this on purpose. She threw herself into the cabinet to make me look bad." I looked up in disbelief, meeting my son's eyes, silently pleading for him to see the truth. For a moment, I thought I saw uncertainty there, a flicker of the son I knew. Then Noah's cries grew louder, and Stephanie expertly redirected Marcus's attention. "Your son needs you," she said firmly. "I'll handle this." As Marcus turned away to comfort Noah, Stephanie's friend Jennifer knelt beside me. "You need medical attention," she said quietly. "That cut on your arm looks deep. I'll drive you to the ER." In a daze, I allowed Jennifer to help me to my feet and guide me toward the door. Stephanie followed, maintaining her performance for the remaining guests. "These things happen," she was saying smoothly. "She's getting older, lost her balance. We've told her she should use a cane, but she's so stubborn." The last thing I saw before the door closed behind me was Marcus holding a sobbing Noah, his back turned to me as Stephanie placed a possessive hand on his shoulder. At the emergency room, I received 15 stitches for the deepest cut on my forearm and treatment for multiple smaller lacerations on my hands and shoulder. Jennifer, to her credit, stayed until the procedure was complete, then drove me back to my car, which remained parked outside Marcus and Stephanie's townhouse. "I should tell you," she said hesitantly as we approached. "I've known Stephanie since college. She's always had issues with anger, competitive to an unhealthy degree, but I've never seen her get physical before." I nodded numbly beyond words at this point. "What she did wasn't right," Jennifer continued. "And what she said afterward was a lie. I saw the whole thing. You didn't throw yourself anywhere." "Thank you for saying that," I managed. "For what it's worth, I don't think I'll be maintaining that friendship anymore," she added. "I can't be around that kind of behavior." I drove home in a fog of pain and disbelief, my bandaged arm throbbing. My heart shattered more thoroughly than the glass cabinet had been. I kept waiting for my phone to ring for Marcus to call and check on me, to apologize, to ask for my version of events. The silence was deafening. When I finally reached home, I took 2 pain pills as prescribed and collapsed into bed, fully clothed, physically and emotionally exhausted. I must have fallen asleep because I was awakened by the ping of an incoming text message. Fumbling for my phone with my uninjured hand, I felt a surge of hope when I saw Marcus's name on the screen. That hope died instantly when I read his message, "Stay away from my family." 4 words, not asking if I was okay, not apologizing for what had happened, not even acknowledging that I was injured, just a cold command to remove myself from their lives. I stared at the screen until the words blurred through my tears, unable to comprehend how the boy I had raised, the young man who had been my rock after his father died, could turn his back on me so completely. In that moment, I felt more alone than I had even after Robert's death, because this time I had lost not just my husband, but my son as well. For days after the incident, I moved through my house like a ghost, my physical pain overshadowed by the emotional devastation. I kept checking my phone, hoping Marcus would call, that he would come to his senses and realize what had happened. The silence was deafening. I tried calling him several times, each call going straight to voicemail. My text messages showed as delivered but remained unanswered. After a week, I drove to Seattle, parking outside their townhouse in a last desperate attempt to speak with my son. Their cars were in the driveway, but no one answered the door despite my repeated knocking. As I turned to leave defeated, I heard Stephanie's voice from an upstairs window. I'm calling the police if you don't leave immediately." I looked up to see her cold face watching me from behind partially closed blinds. "Please," I called. "I just want to talk to Marcus." "He doesn't want to talk to you," she replied. "And if you come here again, we'll get a restraining order." The threat of legal action, of being labeled as some kind of threat to my own family, broke something in me. I drove home in tears, pulled into my driveway, and sat staring at the house where I had raised my son, where we had been happy once. How had everything gone so terribly wrong? In the weeks that followed, I struggled to maintain even a semblance of normal life. I called in sick to the library multiple times, unable to face interactions with others. I barely ate, losing weight my already slim frame couldn't afford to lose. Sleep came in fitful bursts, interrupted by nightmares in which I reached for Marcus, only to have him vanish before my eyes. My friends noticed my withdrawal and reached out with increasing concern. Linda, my closest friend since teaching days, finally showed up at my door with groceries and a determined expression. "Enough," she declared, pushing past me into the kitchen. "You're not answering calls, you've missed book club twice, and you look like you haven't eaten in days. What's going on, Flora?" The simple act of kindness broke the dam I'd built around my emotions. I collapsed at my kitchen table, sobbing as I told Linda everything. The years of increasing isolation from Marcus Stephanie's controlling behavior, the birthday party confrontation, and finally the devastating text message. Linda listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly troubled. When I finished, she took my hands in hers. "Oh, Flora, I'm so sorry. But I have to say this sounds like classic alienation. Stephanie has been systematically cutting Marcus off from you, and probably from anyone else who knew him before her." "But why? What have I ever done to her?" "It's not about you," Linda said gently. "People like Stephanie need complete control. Anyone who represents a connection to Marcus's life before her, anyone who might have influence or offer a different perspective, is a threat." She squeezed my hands. "And you're the biggest threat of all, the mother who loves him unconditionally, who knows the real Marcus, not the version she's molded him into." Linda's words resonated with an uncomfortable truth. Over the next few days, I began researching emotional abuse and controlling relationships, recognizing patterns in Stephanie's behavior that I should have identified years earlier. The isolation from friends and family, the constant criticism, the monitoring of phone and social media, the swift punishment for any perceived disobedience, the rewriting of history and reality. These were all tactics of abusers, and my son was caught in this toxic web. But knowing the problem didn't automatically provide a solution. I couldn't force Marcus to see what was happening or to leave a situation he didn't recognize as abusive. And my most immediate concern, my grandson Noah, remained completely inaccessible to me. 2 months after the birthday party incident, still aching from the estrangement, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Flora Bennett?" a woman's voice asked when I answered. "Yes, who's calling?" "My name is Sarah Miller. You don't know me, but I'm in a support group for parents alienated from their adult children. Your friend Linda mentioned your situation to my sister, who suggested I reach out." Sarah explained that she had experienced something similar with her son and daughter-in-law. "It took 3 years before I saw my son again," she said, "but we've reconciled now. It can happen, Flora. Don't give up hope." That conversation was the lifeline I desperately needed. Sarah invited me to join their support group, which met monthly in a church basement not far from my home. There I found people who understood exactly what I was going through. Parents and grandparents cut off from their families, often due to controlling partners or unresolved conflicts. The group was facilitated by Dr. Eleanor James, a family therapist specializing in estrangement and reconciliation. In my first private session with her, I poured out the entire history of my relationship with Marcus and Stephanie. "What you're describing shows multiple red flags for emotional abuse," Dr. James confirmed after listening to my story. "Stephanie has systematically isolated Marcus from his support network, beginning with you, his closest relationship. The physical aggression you experienced is concerning not just for you, but for Marcus and Noah as well." "Do you think they're in danger?" I asked, my chest tightening with fresh worry. "I can't make that determination without meeting them," she said carefully. "But research shows that individuals who use physical intimidation against one family member often extend that behavior to others, especially when they feel their control is threatened. What can I do? He won't even speak to me. First, document everything, she advised. Every incident, every text message, every attempt at contact. If there's ever a legal situation regarding Noah, this documentation could be crucial. And second, she continued, we need to find a way to reach Marcus in an environment Stephanie doesn't control. That's when genuine communication might be possible, with Dr. James's guidance and the support of my new group. I began the slow process of rebuilding my emotional strength while looking for opportunities to reconnect with Marcus. I wrote letters I never sent, pouring out my love and concern. I maintained a journal documenting every aspect of our estrangement, including photos of my injuries from the birthday party. And I began informing myself about grandparents' rights in Washington state, though the thought of legal action made me physically ill. I also reached out cautiously to people from Marcus's past, college friends, former colleagues, anyone who might still have a connection to him. Most had lost touch after his marriage, describing similar patterns of canceled plans and unreturned messages. But one former coworker mentioned that Marcus had recently changed jobs, leaving his long-standing position at the software company to work for a firm owned by Stephanie's father. It seemed odd, the colleague said. He was on track for promotion here, doing work he loved. Then suddenly he resigned to take a lower position at his father-in-law's company, said it was better for his family situation. This information troubled me deeply. Marcus had been passionate about his career, proud of his accomplishments in a field he'd chosen and excelled in. That he would abandon it for a position under his father-in-law's thumb suggested Stephanie's control extended well beyond their home life. 6 months after Noah's birthday party, I received an unexpected message from Jennifer, the friend who had taken me to the emergency room. I thought you should know, she wrote. Stephanie and Marcus are having serious issues. She's been bad-mouthing him to mutual friends, claiming he's useless and weak. I've distanced myself from her, but I still hear things through the grapevine. Just wanted you to be aware. While I took no pleasure in their marital problems, the message gave me a glimmer of hope that perhaps Marcus was beginning to see Stephanie's true nature. I thanked Jennifer for the information and asked her to let me know if she heard anything concerning about Noah's welfare. A week later, my phone rang at 11 at night. The screen showed Marcus's number. My hands trembling, I answered immediately. Marcus. Mom. His voice sounded strained, hoarse. I don't know who else to call. What's wrong? Are you okay? A long pause, then a shaky breath. No, I'm not okay. Can we meet somewhere tomorrow, maybe? Of course, I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite my racing heart. Anywhere, anytime. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between Seattle and Portland neutral territory, where Stephanie would be unlikely to appear. I barely slept that night, alternating between hope and anxiety about what Marcus might say, what condition I would find him in. The Marcus who sat across from me the next day bore little resemblance to the confident, happy son I remembered. He looked thin and exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and a nervous habit of glancing toward the door every few minutes. Most alarmingly, he wore a long-sleeved shirt, despite the warm weather, and I caught glimpses of bruising on his wrists when he reached for his coffee. Thank you for coming, he said, his voice low. I wasn't sure you would after everything. I would always come for you, Marcus, I said simply, no matter what. He stared into his coffee for a long moment. I owe you an apology, many apologies, for what happened at the party, for that text message, for the last 3 years, really. What's happening, Marcus? I asked gently. I can see you're not well. He glanced around nervously before rolling up his sleeves slightly, revealing a pattern of bruises in various stages of healing. Stephanie has issues with anger. It's been getting worse. I fought to keep my expression neutral, despite the horror I felt. How long has this been going on? The physical stuff about a year, but the control, the criticism, the isolation, that started almost from the beginning. He laughed bitterly. I just didn't recognize it for what it was. Over the next hour, Marcus revealed the full extent of the nightmare his marriage had become. Stephanie's initially subtle control had evolved into something far more sinister. She monitored his phone and email, controlled their finances completely, and had systematically cut him off from friends, colleagues, and most painfully, from me. "I actually believed you were trying to undermine our marriage," he admitted, shame evident in his voice. "She kept telling me you were jealous of her, that you were trying to make her look bad, that you were stuck in the past and couldn't accept that I had my own family now. And I believed her because it was easier than admitting I'd made a terrible mistake." "What changed?" I asked. His eyes met mine, filled with pain. "Noah. She started treating him the same way she treats me, criticizing everything he does, flying into rages over tiny mistakes, grabbing him hard enough to leave marks." His voice broke. "He's just a little boy, Mom, and I've been too weak, too beaten down to protect him properly." My heart shattered anew this time for my grandson. "Have you considered leaving?" "Every day," he admitted. "But she's threatened to take Noah if I try. She says no judge would give custody to a father who can't even stand up for himself. Her family has money connections. I'm afraid she's right." "So what can I do?" I asked, fighting back tears. "How can I help?" "I need to get evidence," he said. "Documentation of her behavior toward both me and Noah. Build a case before I make any move, and I need somewhere safe to go when the time comes." "You know, you and Noah always have a home with me," I said immediately. For the first time, a ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I was hoping you'd say that." Then his expression grew serious again. "I can't promise when or how this will happen. It might take months to gather what I need. Can you be patient a little longer?" "Of course," I assured him. "But please be careful, both of you." We parted with a tight hug, Marcus promising to stay in touch through a new email account Stephanie didn't know about. As I watched him drive away, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Horror at what he was enduring, fear for Noah's safety, but also a fragile hope that someday my son and grandson might return to my life permanently. The waiting period that followed was one of the most difficult times of my life. Marcus's emails were infrequent and brief, always concerned that Stephanie might discover our communication. He reported setting up hidden cameras in their home, consulting quietly with a divorce attorney, and documenting incidents of Stephanie's abuse toward both him and Noah. Then 3 months after our coffee shop meeting, I received a call at 2 a.m. "Mom!" Marcus's voice was urgent, barely above a whisper. "We need to come now. Tonight. Can you meet us halfway?" "What happened?" I asked, already getting out of bed and reaching for clothes. "She went too far," he said, his voice breaking. "She threw a toy at Noah for making noise during her work call, hit him in the face. He's got a black eye, Mom, a 3-year-old with a black eye." "I'm on my way," I said, fully alert now. "Do you have somewhere safe to wait until I get there?" "We're at a hotel off I-5, he said, giving me the details. "I grabbed some clothes and Noah's favorite stuffed animal, but not much else." "It doesn't matter," I assured him. "We can replace things. Just stay safe until I get there." The drive north in the pre-dawn darkness was surreal, my mind racing with worry and plans. When I finally reached the hotel, I found Marcus sitting in his car in the parking lot, a sleeping Noah buckled into his car seat in the back. "I was afraid to check in using my credit card," Marcus explained. "She monitors all our accounts." I hugged him tightly, then peered into the back seat at my sleeping grandson. Even in the dim light, I could see the swelling and discoloration around his left eye. My chest tightened with protective fury. "Let's get you both home," I said, swallowing my anger. "We'll figure everything out once you're safe." The 3-hour drive back to Portland was tense, Marcus constantly checking the rearview mirror, as though expecting Stephanie to appear at any moment. Noah woke briefly confused about why he was in the car in the middle of the night, but quickly fell back asleep. As we pulled into my driveway, the first light of dawn was breaking over the horizon. "Welcome home," I said softly, touching Marcus's arm. "Both of you." "Thanks, Mom," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "For everything. For still being here despite how terribly I treated you." "That's what family does," I told him simply. "The real kind anyway. We forgive. We heal. We stay." As we carried a still sleeping Noah into the house, I felt a profound sense that while our journey was far from over, there would be legal battles, emotional healing, and countless challenges ahead. We had taken the crucial first step. My son and grandson were home safe under my roof, and I would do everything in my power to ensure they stayed that way. The months following Marcus and Noah's arrival at my home were a complex mixture of healing legal battles and adjustment to our new reality. The first priority was ensuring Noah's safety and addressing his physical and emotional needs. I took photos documenting his black eye and the finger-shaped bruises on his arms, adding them to the extensive evidence Marcus had already gathered. The morning after their arrival, we consulted with a family law attorney recommended by Dr. James. Attorney Melissa Rodriguez specialized in cases involving domestic abuse and child custody disputes. After reviewing our documentation, she filed for an emergency temporary custody order for Noah citing the physical abuse. "We have strong evidence," Melissa assured us. "The photographs, Marcus's documentation, the recordings from the hidden cameras, and the testimony from Jennifer about the incident at Noah's birthday party. But prepare yourselves. Stephanie won't give up without a fight." She was right. Within days of Marcus and Noah's departure, Stephanie launched a calculated counterattack. She filed a police report claiming Marcus had kidnapped Noah. She contacted my neighbors telling them I was harboring her child against court orders. She even showed up at my house one night pounding on the door and screaming accusations until a concerned neighbor called the police. When officers arrived, Stephanie presented herself as the distraught mother separated from her child. Fortunately, Marcus was able to produce the temporary emergency custody order, and the officers, noting Noah's still visible facial bruising, advised Stephanie to address the matter through legal channels. Undeterred, she hired a team of expensive lawyers who painted Marcus as mentally unstable and me as a manipulative mother who had poisoned him against his loving wife. They claimed Noah's injuries were from a fall at preschool and that Marcus had orchestrated his departure as part of a plan we had concocted together. The legal proceedings were grueling and expensive. Marcus had limited funds since leaving his job, and Stephanie's family's wealth gave her considerable advantage. I used a significant portion of my retirement savings to help with legal fees, considering it the best possible investment in my family's future. Throughout this period, Noah showed signs of trauma. He had frequent nightmares, grew anxious around loud noises, and became distraught when either Marcus or I left his sight. We enrolled him in play therapy with a child psychologist specializing in trauma who helped us understand how to support his recovery. Children are remarkably resilient. Dr. Bennett, no relation, told us. With consistent support and a stable, loving environment, Noah can process these experiences in healthy ways. Marcus, too, needed healing. Years of emotional and physical abuse had eroded his confidence and sense of self. He began therapy sessions with Dr. James, working through the patterns that had allowed Stephanie to isolate and control him. He reconnected with old friends, rebuilt professional relationships, and gradually reclaimed pieces of himself that had been suppressed during his marriage. One evening, about 2 months after they'd come to live with me, Marcus sat beside me on the porch swing after Noah had gone to bed. "I keep thinking about Dad," he said quietly, "about what he would think of all this." "He would be heartbroken about what you and Noah have endured," I replied honestly, "but so proud of your courage in leaving and breaking the cycle." Marcus nodded, tears gathering in his eyes. "I just keep wondering how I let it happen. I was raised better than that. You and Dad taught me what healthy love looks like, and still I fell for someone who was the opposite of everything you demonstrated." "Abusers are expert manipulators," I reminded him gently. "They target kind, empathetic people precisely because they're more willing to make excuses for bad behavior to see the best in others. Your capacity for love and forgiveness isn't a weakness, Marcus. It's what makes you who you are." He squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry for the text message, for telling you to stay away. It was the cruelest thing I've ever done." "You were under her influence," I said, "and I've already forgiven you." "I don't deserve it," he whispered. "That's the thing about forgiveness," I told him. "It's never about what someone deserves. It's about refusing to let pain have the final word." 6 months after leaving Stephanie, Marcus received a job offer from his former employer, who had kept his position open. The company's HR department was surprisingly supportive, having seen cases of domestic abuse before. They arranged for enhanced security protocols and offered flexible hours so Marcus could attend court hearings and therapy appointments. The custody battle continued, with Stephanie fighting viciously for control of Noah. The court appointed a guardian ad litem to represent Noah's interests, who conducted thorough interviews with all parties and reviewed the extensive evidence. Her report strongly recommended that Marcus retain primary custody, with Stephanie granted only supervised visitation until she completed anger management and parenting classes. The final custody hearing was tense, with Stephanie's parents in attendance glaring at us from across the courtroom. When the judge announced his decision upholding the guardian's recommendation, Stephanie erupted in fury, screaming accusations and threats until bailiffs had to escort her from the courtroom. "This isn't over," she shouted as they led her away. "He's my son, mine." Outside the courthouse, Marcus stood for a long moment staring at the legal papers in his hand. "It's really over," he said, sounding almost disbelieving. "We're free." "Not completely," I cautioned, ever practical. "She'll still have visitation rights eventually. Noah will still have a relationship with her." "I know," he nodded. "And that's right. Despite everything, she is his mother. But now it will be on terms that keep him safe." That evening we celebrated with a small dinner, just the three of us. Noah, still too young to fully understand the court proceedings, nevertheless seemed to sense the shift in energy. He laughed more freely than I'd heard since his arrival, building an elaborate fort with couch cushions and demanding that both Marcus and I crawl inside to see his secret hideout. As we sat cross-legged in the cushion fort playing by flashlight with Noah's dinosaur figures, I felt a profound sense of rightness. This was family as it should be, imperfect, still healing, but bound by genuine love and respect. 2 years have passed since that night. Our lives have found a new rhythm, different from what any of us might have imagined, but fulfilling in its own way. Marcus purchased a small house just a few blocks from mine, close enough for daily visits, but establishing his and Noah's independent household. He has thrived in his return to his original company, recently receiving a promotion to development team leader. Noah, now 5, has blossomed into a talkative, curious kindergartner who loves dinosaurs, building blocks, and the small vegetable garden we planted together in my backyard. His therapy sessions have decreased to monthly check-ins, and his nightmares have all but disappeared. He still sees Stephanie for supervised visits twice a month, which sometimes go well and sometimes don't, depending on her fluctuating commitment to her own treatment program. As for me, I've discovered the joys of being an actively involved grandmother, something I feared I'd never experience during those dark days of estrangement. Noah spends Wednesday afternoons and Saturday mornings with me baking cookies, reading stories, and learning to ride a bicycle. Yes, the very same blue bicycle that sparked the confrontation at his birthday party. Marcus restored it a second time, and Noah proudly rides it around my driveway, training wheels recently removed. Marcus has begun dating again cautiously. The woman he's seeing now, Bethany, is a children's librarian I actually introduced him to during a story hour at my library. She's kind, patient with Noah, and respectful of boundaries, all qualities Marcus now recognizes as essential. Most importantly, she encourages rather than restricts his relationships with friends and family. Sometimes when I watch them together, Marcus, Noah, and Bethany, I feel Robert's presence strongly, as though he's standing beside me, witnessing our family's healing. "They're going to be okay," I sometimes whisper to him. "We all are." The journey from that terrible birthday party to today has been difficult beyond words. There were moments I feared we'd never find our way back to each other, that the damage was too extensive to repair. But love, especially between parent and child, has a remarkable capacity to endure, to forgive, to rebuild. If you're watching this and facing estrangement from someone you love, please know that reconciliation is possible. It may not happen quickly or easily, and it may not look exactly as you imagined, but connections can be restored often stronger for having been tested. Have you experienced family estrangement or reconciliation? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this account of our journey has touched you in any way, please consider subscribing and sharing with others who might need to hear a message of hope. Remember that even in our darkest moments, when those closest to us say, "Stay away," love can find its path home. Thank you for listening to our story, and may you find healing in your own family relationships, whatever challenges they may face.